It's going. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone or time you may be listening to this or watching the playback. My name is not Ben Woodward. This is Mike DiMuccio standing in for Ben Woodward in his leadership call here on Tuesday, March 6th, 2018. I had an interesting conversation with my Team Kaizen group last night that I thought was relevant enough to utilize in today's call. So those of you who were on last night's call, you may feel compelled to chime in or not. Please feel free to interact on this call. It started off with me reminding my team that we had been speaking on a previous call about objectivity in business, the need for us as business owners to be objective about our business. And we tend to be in Nikken very subjective because it's a business that is an emotional business. It's a business where it's our own, and for many, it's not necessarily our sole source of income, so it doesn't have to be on the level of objectivity that it would have to be if it was the one thing that paid your bills and your mortgage, etc. So we tend to, in the Nikken business and the gig economy, treat our side thing, if this is in fact a side thing or side hustle, as Eric Worre would refer to it as not necessarily as objective as we would our primary form of income. But if we were to treat this objectively, then we wouldn't set wishes, we would set goals. And a goal is a date with destiny. It's no different than things you may be familiar with when you had set goals in your life growing up. For instance, the goal to be married on a certain date. It wasn't a wish to be married on a certain date. When you finally set the date, it was the date. And a whole slew of things had to go with making that a reality, which began with certain decisions, certain commitments like, getting the location locked down, getting maybe the church or the synagogue or wherever you were to be married locked down, then eventually the invitation list locked down, and at some point in time, your cutoff date for the invitation list, the invites had to go out so that you could get the responses, and you gave the responses a cutoff time because you needed a certain number of responses so that you could do all the other planning. So when we look at something as finite, as definitive as a wedding, we tend to be fairly objective when it comes to making sure everything happens and comes together to make the event that you had been planning. And if you also recall, those of you who've gone through this process, you know that generally speaking, you've got all the time in the world from the moment you say, we're going to do this. And as you get closer and closer to the actual date of the wedding, things become more manic, more compressed, much more activity happens in a shorter span of time. It's a little bit more anxious. There's a greater sense of urgency to get things complete. Right up to the last minute, you're still working on details. But the day comes and goes. You had a great time. Everybody had a great time, and it's a memory. So that's how we can be, if we choose to be, when it comes to being objective. When it comes to our business, especially if it's our side business or, again, a side hustle, as Eric Wood would refer to it, we tend to be less objective. We tend to be more subjective, which means, well, if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. Well, if I didn't get that goal, I didn't get that goal. I can always reset it next month, and I can always go after it again. And that's true. And that's definitely one way of operating. But it's not objective as much as it is subjective. And because it's not objective, it tends to diminish this thing called sense of urgency. Now, the reason I bring sense of urgency up is because in my interview of one of these young men that I was talking with from another networking company, a seven-figure income earner, one of the things that he brought up was his daily method of operation, the things that he does on a daily basis. He was just new to Alberta. He just moved in there about 3 weeks ago. And in the 3 weeks that he had been there, knowing not a soul, joined a few clubs, got to know a few people, and built 51 people in his downline in 3 weeks. Now, how would you like to have 51 people join your downline in 3 weeks? Clearly, this guy is not doing what we're doing, I'd say, on average. So he has some type of a work ethic and some level of objectivity that's propelling him at lightning speed. And given the company that he represents, I can assure you, it's not based on the product. In fact, the product conversation is almost completely irrelevant. It's only just sort of the grease that makes the engine work in that particular instance. What is driving and compelling people to be interested in the dialogue and the conversation is the idea of what does your pension look like? The idea that you do expect to retire, at what age, and how much money do you need to have up in savings if you expect to retire by that age, and how well are you doing at saving that money? And so he just does a little bit of arithmetic with people, and they quickly realize they're not on pace, they're not on par, they're nowhere objective about meeting those expectations. And so that opens up the conversation. Do you want to be? Do you want to see if you can double and triple that pension plan of yours? So that's the conversation that drives that machine. But his work ethic is 2 to 3 one-on-ones per day, plus, get this, 5 to 6 group meetings a week. His daily and weekly MO, his DMO, his daily method of operation, is 2 to 3 one-on-ones per day and at least one in-home. And of course, for him to even have an in-home means people are inviting him into their home to meet with their prospects. So he's reaching through the warm market into their warm market very, very quickly. This is not taking months. This is taking days to get into somebody's space. So there's clearly a sense of urgency that he's operating with that's driving his behavior, and in turn compelling others and driving others' behavior so that there's an accelerated rate to the tune of 53 people or 51 people in 3 weeks. So that brought up the conversation last night of urgency. If this is such a key component to our business and creating success in our business, especially if we have any degree of interest in achieving or helping people from our team achieve any of these incentives, all of the incentives are based on some type of a time frame, something that has to happen within a certain time frame. So that's objective. And that's the only way to measure it, to know if it's been done. So if we don't add a level of objectivity to our business, then it's always only ever going to be humming along without real momentum, without real urgency. And people, therefore, won't take it urgently, won't embrace the culture of urgency. So I feel compelled to say we have a culture in Nikken, of complacency and not urgency. And the challenge with that is we've not only compromised our own business and our potential, but we compromise that of the company as well, since essentially what's representing the leadership of the company is on this call. So if we only look at ourselves in the mirror and look at our level of objectivity, our level of urgency, and measure the value or the positionality or the future of Nikken as in our hands, is it in good hands? Now, this is not a message to make us feel bad. It's a message to bring some level of objectivity into the discussion. And one of the things that came up then was, well, what drives objectivity? It's a date with destiny. And so having objective business goals, having actual goals. And so our Nikken incentive program is one of the best we've had ever. Our compensation plan is not only the simplest, but I think the fairest and the easiest we've ever had, ever, since I've been in Nikken. Combine these two together, and what we have is a very strong and very compelling objective business plan. And so how many of you are really serious about meeting some of the goals here? And in turn, transferring that seriousness, that level of objectivity to the people you're talking with. Are they getting a sense from you that you're committed to that? Are they getting a sense of urgency from you? Now, I want to transition to another point here that was made last night. It was really, really great. I asked the group to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being, of the last 5 appointments you've had, if they were to rate you on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the urgency they sensed from you, what would they rate you at? Forget about what you think. The question is, what are you being perceived as? Would they perceive you as somebody who's really on a tear, who's focused and purposeful and has a sense of urgency and getting something done? And the ratings were 6, 4.5, 4, pretty low ratings in terms of urgency. Then it came up, well, urgency can be transmitted or communicated in a sense of passion, which is really good, because one of the things that Eric Worre talked about in his interview, when I interviewed him a couple weeks ago, he said people are attracted to leadership, which is demonstrated by passion and conviction. Leadership demonstrated by passion and conviction. So if we were to measure your urgency in terms of passion and conviction, again, ask those same 5 people, on a scale of 1 to 10, how passionate and what was the level of conviction of these people, what would they have rated you as? Again, if we were taking stock of that and understood that this was a key component to what is attracting people to you and what will move them fast into action, is that being transmitted and transferred to them? Is there a sense of urgency, commitment, and passion being transferred to them so that there's engagement real quick, which speeds the process up, which causes duplication to happen faster and momentum, of course, to happen much quicker. And then these achievements become secondary. They become just a natural consequence of the ebb and flow of what's happening. But what starts all of this in motion? Is it the company? Do we need a sale? Do we need, at the end of the day, even if they offer a sale, does that mean you're going to take advantage of it? Does that mean you're going to promote it? And even if you are you going to do it with a sense of urgency and passion and conviction? So if we were to measure our sense of urgency, our passion, if the people we were in contact with were to measure it, what would they grade us? And if it's such a key component to how people respond, I think it was Madeline on one of our calls said, she had this marketing guy, real successful marketing guy on one of our calls who had just watched me do a quick overview of the new Nikan Opportunity, business opportunity presentation. And he said it was very impressive, a lot of information, a lot of details. But when Madeline asked him, why is he interested in Nikan? He was very quick to say, I'm interested in you because of your passion and your conviction. That's what he said. So if this is what's drawing him, and it's not the products, and it's not the business opportunity, and it's not the business opportunity presentation, then at the end of the day, isn't it true what is being said here by some of these people? That people are joining you, and the speed at which they're joining you is in proportion to the sense they get from you in terms of passion and conviction, which can translate into urgency. A sense of urgency because you're going someplace and you're inviting them to come with you. Now, the question then came up is, can we have urgency without being pushy, without being perceived as being pushy? Well, if you've got urgency that's passionate, is that pushy? What's the difference? One is when you're trying to push somebody into something. One is when you're running somewhere and you're saying, you're perfectly welcome to come with me. And one of the lines that I got from Eric Worre, there's a promised land, we can get there together. You in? That's sort of the battle cry of leaders. There's a promised land and we can get there together. You in? The idea is it's an attraction. It's I'm going somewhere. I have somewhere to go. I'm getting married. This is the day. You can be the photographer, or I can get another photographer, but I am going to have a photographer. It's that kind of conveying that kind of a message where you've got someplace to go. The tendency I find is in a more complacent state is we tend to put all our energy into massaging the situation and consider that we're doing them a service because we're all on. Where they're, helping them in every way and you know what? That's fantastic. That's great. But that's not necessarily objective behavior, because then your timeline is now their timeline. And if you've got 50 people that you're processing, or 20 people that you're processing, or 15 people that you're processing, what is your timeline? It's 15 different timelines. So how can you be objective that way? What if you had a date with destiny and it really wasn't a question of who or if, but who? Not if this was going to happen, but who this was going to happen with. Now, that then brings up another interesting point. Doesn't this sound a little bit like the law of attraction, where you kind of envision an end in mind? You step into the shoes of the person as if you, in fact, are that person. You experience it in your mind and in your emotions and in your thoughts and in your behavior and in your actions as if you already are the recipient of the benefits of the person you imagine to have received. And then you shall receive as the law. I think this was from Dave Johnson, from Earl Nightingale, from Mr. Masuda. I don't know how many ways we got this, but before you can achieve the kind of life you want, you must think, act, talk, and conduct yourself in all your affairs as would the person you wish to become. How would you approach the next person on your list, or even the person you're engaged in right now, if you knew you qualified for the trip for Italy? If you knew you qualified for the trip for Italy, if you were already a recipient of the qualifications for the trip to Italy, it's done. How would the next conversation go? Would it be about you going to Italy, or would it be about them going to Italy? See, you're going. Want to come? What do you think? So the idea of the law of attraction then puts us in a state of mind, in a framework around which our sense of urgency is heightened, where our sense of objectivity is more precise and more clear, where it's not about doubt that's interfering with the message, or doubt interfering with who we are being or how we are communicating. It's about, this is already a fait accompli. This part of the equation is done. Now the only thing I'm on the hunt for is to see who fills in the blanks. Is it you? No? Okay. Is it you? No? Okay. Is it you? No? Okay. Well, it's somebody, because it's already done. So that somebody and those somebodies will clearly reveal themselves because it's done. See, the law of attraction says that's how I would think. That's how I would see the world. That's how I would behave. And I'm not being pushy. I'm just being passionate about what I know. Somebody's coming with me because I've already met the conditions. I'm just trying to find out who it is. And I'm really excited about it. I'm excited for them. I'm excited about what they're going to experience, etc. It's a state of being that has a completely different set of circumstances associated with it. And what does it take to go from complacency to conviction? From complacency to urgency? What does it take? From thinking about getting married to making a decision about getting married, setting the date? What's it take? A committed decision. You make your mind up one time, not more than one time. It's made up one time. The decision is made once. It's made wholeheartedly. You step into that new reality. What does it feel like? And I know maybe not everybody's had this experience, but what does it feel like when you said, "Will you marry me?" Or that person said, I will, or I do. When you think about it, there's an energy that happened. There was an exchange of energy, and it's almost as if the world went from black and white to color. It just goes boom. And all of a sudden now you're in this new reality and everything's different. All of a sudden, everything is different. Every situation is different. Because you actually did go into an alternate reality. You actually did. What we're starting to understand is that consciousness, or the stream of consciousness, is what we create, or what we call reality, is nothing but moving pictures like a movie. Move from one to the next, to the next, to the next reality in a series, in a sequential series that we call time. But we can shift into alternate realities just like that, by shifting our consciousness. We do that by making conscious decisions. Often not, though, when we're in a state of complacency, we seem to be moved by conditions rather than moving the conditions by choice. But nonetheless, we are experiencing time, which is a progression of one reality to the next. Only most people are repeating reality. It's the same old, same old, same old, same old, same old. They're not drawing the new energy in. So when we make a decision to expand to a new possibility, like when you say you're getting engaged to be married, you're not saying, we're getting engaged to think about getting married. You're getting engaged, which means you know you're married as of a certain date because you set the date. And you already start living in your mind and in your behavior as if you're married. Because you know you made the decision. The priest hasn't said yes, or the rabbi hasn't said anything yet. You haven't broken the glass. You haven't done that dance. You're not there yet physically, but mentally, emotionally, you're totally all in. And everybody who's around you feels it and experiences it. Why would our business, our livelihood, our passion, the thing that makes us want to get up in the morning and make a difference, why wouldn't we have that level of objectivity? Why wouldn't we have that level of urgency, that level of passion, that level of commitment? Why? Because we think, what? We're not deserving of it? The people around us aren't deserving of it? If not us, you on this screen, if not you, who? Please tell me, who is more deserving? If it's not us leading, who then? Who's leading Niken into the future? Who? So, I would ask you to connect with this idea. I think it's a great idea to make the assumption you're going to Italy. I think it's a real great idea to maybe collect some pictures, maybe start looking at some of the places you're going to visit, because it's a beautiful country. It's an incredible place. And you may take some excursions outside of the Niken thing and go visit something of your own. Make a point of doing that. So if this is already a fait complete and you start to operate as if that's the case, and by the way, here's what I'd like to offer. I'd like to offer the opportunity to recognize you on stage in October in Toronto. By the way, it's the Delta Hotel. You're going to love it. One of the nicest hotels in the city, downtown, right next to the CN Tower. We're going to have a great time, a real great time. And it's going to be a very special event because there's going to be a ton of recognition. And I especially want to recognize you for having achieved the trip to Italy. So why am I talking about October and not December? Why do you want to wait until December? That's just totally arbitrary. It's like saying, well, let's get married in December instead of October. October's a better time to get married anyway. So I suggest that we become more objective. We start to understand that we really do shape our reality by the decisions we make and the commitments we make to those decisions. And as we start to act, think, believe and act or behave in a manner that's consistent with the person who is that person walking in those shoes in the very near future, then that's what it's going to take. It's going to take that from this group, not another group. It's going to take this group to step it up to a level that's worthy of you. You know, I always ask myself, is Nikan big enough for me? You might say, that's a pretty egotistical place to think and be or whatever. Is it? Or is it just somebody who has a really strong sense of self-worth? That money is not what fuels me or drives me. There's not enough money in the world. And they keep printing more anyway. So what difference does it make? It really has no value. It's the relationships. It's the impact. It's whether or not my life has mattered in the legacy that I leave behind anyway, and in the people and the lives I touch while I'm here. If that's a real measure, if you value that and you measure success that way, then on a scale of 1 to 10, how you doing? Are you living up at full throttle, or are you dialed it right down? It's like, oh, well, you know, I'm 54. I just turned 54, February 28th. Oh, you know, I'm 54. Well, you know, I'm middle age, and well, you know, we don't do things like we used to do when we were in our 20s and our 30s. Oh, that's a really pathetic way to think, Mike. Or you can say I'm 54. I'm dialing it up because now I get it. Now I get how foolish I've been for 53 years. I've been living at a 6 or a 7 when I could have been at a 9 or a 10 this whole time. Every day could be a 10. Every day I can wake up and dial it up to 10 because I decide who gets to dial it up. Nobody decides that for me. I could live every day as a 10 because I'm given this day to live. I can live it with passion, conviction, urgency, and I can invite others to join me. And don't call me crazy, because if you're living at a 6 or a 7, who's crazy? Nikan is a vehicle. It's a tool that allows us to influence others with some degree of objectivity. We have tools, we have products, we have a comp plan, we have a business plan. We have a common story, something we can share with people that can touch their lives and have a generational effect. Should we treat it with a 5 or a 6? Don't look to Nikan for the answer. Don't look to our CEO for the answer. He's dealing with it the way he knows how to deal with it, but he doesn't create the business. We do. He doesn't create the future. We do. He would be more than happy if somehow we kept putting the products on back order. He would be like, oh, they're making me crazy, but thank God they're making me crazy. Rather than, we need to drop this product because it just isn't moving. Man, are we operating at a 10 or a 4 or a 5? One of the greatest opportunities in the history of man. I know this guy who's put 51 people on in 3 weeks is not selling the products, and it really doesn't matter because they're commodities. They're like something you already have. Who cares? Nothing. It's not going to change your life. It's not going to change the world. It's not going to leave a legacy. It's not going to change someone's life. It's not going to. Think about it. We have that. What if we added the other element? That conviction, that passion, that sense of purpose, and drive it with some urgency because we've got places to go, people to see, things to do. Yeah, I love Nikan too, Mary Ellen. Amen. That's my message for you guys today, and I hope some of it resonates with you because we really need to dial this thing up, guys. Dude, it's March, man. Let's not wait until December. It's March. Let's get on with the march. So, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you on the Nikan Highway. And thanks, Ben, for sharing your time with me.
Thank you, Mike.